Hey, this is Klaus from Plant-Based News, and I'm honoured to be with Dr. Milton Mills. Thank you so much.
My pleasure to be here.
So I just want to talk about the health criticism. In regards to that specifically, I just want to talk about what somebody said. Joe Rogan, who's a massive podcast host, he said the doctors in that film are lying. What would he say to people like that?
Well, first of all, what did he elaborate? What specifically was he referring to? Because, you know, it's very easy to make an unfounded claim, but if he doesn't back it up with specifics, what I would say to Joe Rogan is, Joe Rogan, you need more fiber in your diet because you're full of it. Because unless he can come up with some specific instance of how we were lying, and me specifically, he's just full of crap. Now, let me say this. There was one specific criticism that was leveled at me by a nutritionist by the name of...
vegan nutritionist.
Yes, Messina. What she tried to take me to task for was in What the Health, I said that only plants make protein. And she alleged that animals make protein all day long. So I did a very concise Facebook post, and I said to her, if you can demonstrate an animal that is able to take atmospheric nitrogen, split the molecules apart, reduce it into a form that it can be incorporated into amino acids, and then take those amino acids and string them together in proteins, I guarantee you that you'll win a Nobel Prize. But you can't, because animals cannot make protein. Only plants can make protein. All we do as animals is we take plant protein, amino acids and proteins that are synthesized by plants, and we recycle them. But we do not make protein. So that was a ridiculous attempted criticism, because I was absolutely correct. Only plants make protein.
Did she reply to your Facebook post?
No, she didn't. And I don't think she will, because she ought to be embarrassed.
When you hear people like Neil Bernard or Dr. McDougall, all of these great plant-based doctors, they talk a lot about the clinical trials that have been done that show a plant-based diet is really, really healthy.
Oh,
but often they don't talk about the anatomy and the fact we're designed to eat plants. Yeah, that's kind of your specialty, isn't it?
Absolutely, because I'm glad you asked that question, because that's kind of where I see myself really putting in the missing piece in this the whole plant-based effort. I mean, we know, as you just mentioned, from studies that plant-based diets are best for heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, cancer, and so forth. We know that plant-based diets cause you to have a smaller footprint, carbon footprint, and are better for the environment. But the question is, why? Why is that so? Because the issue that I always addressed was, if in fact human beings are omnivores, meaning that we're supposed to eat both meat and plant foods, why is it that eliminating the animal food from our diet makes us healthier, makes us live longer, reduces our risk for developing disease? Well, it's because we really are not omnivores. We are true herbivores. We should not be eating animal food at all. And that's why when we eliminate it from our diet, we are healthier. It's better for us, better for the environment, and clearly better for animals that we aren't killing.
What do you say to the people that say we're natural omnivores?
We aren't. When you look at natural omnivores like bears, raccoons, and so forth, their anatomy and physiology is completely different from ours. Their teeth structure is different from ours. We do not have the dental structure. We don't have the jaw mechanics. We don't have the intestinal structure of an omnivore or carnivore. We are classic herbivores by design. And that's why, for instance, 90% of the people who die from choking every year die eating meat. They're choking on meat. And that's because our teeth, jaw structure, and throat mechanism is not designed to handle this stuff.
But why isn't there this kind of spotlight on this fundamental issue?
Right. Part of it is the fact that it's tradition and the traditional misinformation about what humans are supposed to be eating. Part of it is the fact that people have a misplaced understanding about the importance of animal food. People seem to think that animal food is important, and there's kind of a reason for that. Again, when you look back into the mid to late 19th century, as sort of the scientific method was starting to really get developed, people were starting to really do research into nutrition. One of the things that they found was that at that time, people who ate a primarily, quote, plant-based diet tended to have deficiencies and tended to not have as robust health as people who ate animal food diet. But the reason for that was that these people were eating a restricted plant food diet. They were eating, like, say, in Ireland, they were eating mainly potatoes. Or in the American Midwest, they were eating mainly wheat crops.
The lack of variety.
Right, exactly. So they were eating a limited diet, and they found that people who were eating animals had, better, say, more vitamins, less deficiency. And that's because the animals had already done sort of the gathering of the nutrients that they should have been doing themselves. But nowadays, we know that when you compare someone eating a healthy, varied, plant-based diet to someone eating meat, there's no contest. It's the plant-based eater who's healthiest and who has the lowest risk for disease and who has the most robust health.
You mentioned meat a few times. Can you talk a little bit about dairy?
Absolutely.
Is that the easiest to communicate to people about why we're not designed to eat it?
It's absolutely ludicrous to think that we're supposed to be sucking on the teats of a cow. We're not cows, we're humans. And, the institution or the practice of dairying, that is using cattle for their mammary secretions, is only about 3,000 years old. And the human race is clearly much older than that. So we absolutely do not need dairy foods for anything. Furthermore, studies have shown that dairy protein actually correlates with higher risk for a number of diseases, including cancers such as prostate cancer. As the China study pointed out, some cancers in children. But the lactose in the dairy foods is also suspected of raising the risk in women of ovarian cancer and some other problems. And then, of course, the saturated fat is absolutely unhealthy. The protein in cow's milk, if very young children are exposed to dairy protein before they're a year old, it markedly increases their risk for developing type 1 diabetes. So it should be avoided altogether.
Why did the U.S. government recommend it then?
Because the dairy lobbyists pay a lot of money for it. We all call 1,25-dihydroxycalciferol vitamin D. It's not a vitamin. It's a hormone. Our bodies will make it if we expose ourselves to sunlight. But because the dairy industry started putting it in milk and calling it a vitamin, they have got everybody referring to this hormone as a vitamin. It's not a vitamin and shouldn't be called a vitamin.
In the film What the Health, which you were recently in, you said that by the US government recommending dairy products, that is a form of institutionalized racism.
Oh, there's no question that it is. And the reason is that the government is well aware that the majority of people of color are profoundly lactose intolerant. 95% of Asians are lactose intolerant. 73 to 75% of blacks are lactose intolerant. In the Americas, up to 53% of Hispanics are lactose intolerant, and about 70 to 73% of Native Americans are lactose intolerant, meaning that when they eat dairy foods, they are going to get sick because they cannot digest the milk that's in the dairy foods. But the government still recommends that people eat those foods, not because there's any health benefit, but because the dairy industry wants to sell product. Now, what is the main reason that people recommend or tout that we should eat dairy foods? They say calcium, right? Well, number one, cows don't drink milk, but there's plenty of calcium in their milk, right? Where do they get it from? Green leafy vegetables, the same place that we can get the calcium from. But it's even worse than that, because the studies have shown that there's so much animal protein in a glass of milk that and animal protein actually causes our bodies to lose calcium in our urine. That if you drink a glass of milk, you will actually lose more calcium in your urine than you can absorb from that glass of milk. So you don't get ahead by trying to get calcium from dairy foods. Harvard Nurses Health Study showed that the women who drank the most milk had the highest risk for hip fracture. Worldwide, the risk of osteoporosis and hip fracture correlates with dairy intake. Dairy foods are a lousy way of getting calcium because there's so much animal protein, you end up losing more calcium than you can extract from those foods.
What do you think of the backlash after the film? There are a lot of articles written, a lot of blogs, some medical doctors saying that the information was false. Were you expecting that?
Was I expecting it? Let me just say I'm not surprised by it. I mean, anytime you step out and try to push the frontier of truth, there's going to be pushback. And the sad fact is that Western physicians are Western people, and they are as addicted to these crappy diets as everybody else. And they don't want to believe that these things are unhealthy, but the science is so sound and so incontrovertible that you really can't dismiss it. In fact, Kaiser Permanente, which is one of the largest health organizations in the United States, is now training their physicians to promote plant-based therapies with their patients and to encourage their patients to change to a more plant-based diet because the evidence is so strong. And I don't think it's because Kaiser has suddenly grown a heart and wants to, promote plant-based eating. It's just that they know that if their participants switch to a plant-based diet, they'll be healthier and it'll save the organization money.
But what about the mainstream medical model that makes money from giving people pills and stuff? How do we change their approach?
It's going to have to be changed from the ground up. I mean,
so you think grassroots activism is more important than medical reform? Absolutely.
No. Medical reform is essential, but there's going to be a lot of inertia and a lot of resistance. And part of it is just that, med school is typically 4 years. The curriculum is already crowded and jam-packed, and trying to make room for even more information is going to be a bit difficult. I'm not saying it shouldn't be done, because it should, because it's most important to help people understand that they can avoid heart disease, they can avoid high blood pressure, they can avoid diabetes to a large extent, and even, as I said, reverse and cure these diseases, and people need to be armed with the knowledge of how to do that. But it's just that trying to get these professors who have been sort of trained traditionally to re-educate themselves, it's going to be a chore. I mean, we have to. So the reason I'm laughing is because I frequently use a rather unsavory analogy that I don't know is appropriate for this interview.
Anything's appropriate, man.
Well, I say you have to be like an energetic hooker. You got to work both sides of the street. So we have to do the grassroots thing while we're trying to, get the reform from the top. We got to do both.
What are you most excited about with this plant-based home movement and people knowing the truth about this? Do you think change is happening quickly enough?
It's what I'm most excited about is the fact that I became plant-based. I became vegetarian when I was 16, and this was over 30 years ago. I mean, at that time,
nobody knew about this, right?
First of all, vegan, if you said vegan to somebody, they would have thought you were speaking Klingon. And even vegetarian was considered bizarre and weird, and there was no such thing as going into grocery stores and finding vegan and foods and that sort of thing. So just in my lifetime, I have seen the landscape change dramatically. But especially since What the Health has hit, the impact it has had on people in terms of raising their awareness, making them realize that if they want to be healthy, they've got to change their diet and lifestyle, has been so tremendous. It is really exciting to see this. I mean, change is really happening. You now have major companies that are starting to invest in developing, vegan protein products, vegan plant milks, and so forth. So the change is happening, and to me, that is really exciting. Personally, I am working on trying to get a book published that is going to lay out the scientific argument that human beings are complete herbivores. And to me, the reason I feel that that is so important is because, as I said before, that's the missing piece. Right, yeah. That's the missing piece. Once people understand that, everything else makes sense. Everything else makes sense. It makes sense why avoiding meat and dairy helps us cure heart disease, helps us avoid autoimmune diseases, helps us reverse diabetes, and why it's so much better for the planet. Because like all large social mammals, we are herbivores. And if we would stick to that, we would have a much smaller impact on this planet.
Mm-hmm. What's the book going to be titled, and when is it going to come out? I didn't know about the new book. I'm still working on trying to get the manuscript written. The title that I've picked for it is Diet and Design. Awesome. Thank you so much for the interview. Where can people find out about your upcoming book and your other information? Well, again, the book I'm still working on. I'm looking for a publisher. If there's anybody out there listening that wants to support me in that regard, please contact me. But I have several videos, lectures that are posted to YouTube that are very informative, and I would encourage people to check those out. Gives you a lot of information, a lot of good teaching, and if people need to reach me, they can reach me through PCRM, pcrm.org/Dr. Milton Mills. Great, thanks again. My pleasure.